Hello, fellow Midjourney people. Today's video is all about drawing style references, those styles that emulate graphite, ink, pencil, and line-based rendering. They often have a sketchy, expressive feel that strips things back to their fundamentals. I've used both the period prompt and 4 different subjects to test these styles across a variety of compositions: Cottage, hot air balloon, wolf, and queen. This way you'll get a good sense of how these styles handle detail, contrast, and line variation. To experiment with these styles, you can add --SREF followed by a number in your prompt to activate each specific style. The names don't really matter as they have been invented to add more personality to the styles. And the --seed number 777 you see repeating on the screen next to all the images is also to keep the experiment in place a bit more. It is your choice if you want to leave it out. I recommend that you do. That way, you get your own images but can use this very same style. And I do want to remind you that it is best to keep the personalization off in your settings, because that might yield some unexpected results, which may look drastically different from these styles that you see here. But with all the explanations out the way, let's explore what makes a style look hand-drawn in the Midjourney world. 1. Flat ink contour fill. Detailed linework and high contrast give these drawings a crisp, retro edge. Everything is rendered with control, leaning more towards stylized realism than expressive looseness. The cottage and balloon illustrations are especially strong, with clear forms and a pleasing rhythm. Wolves feel slightly posed, but still convincing. The queens stand out for their fashion-like elegance, though they lean more theatrical than historical. Great for monochrome projects that call for precision with a hint of flair. 2. Graphite washed engraving. Delicate pencil strokes and soft shading give these drawings a romantic, almost storybook realism. There's a gentle use of contrast, with subtle touches of color enhancing key details without overpowering the sketchwork. The cottages are especially atmospheric, full of texture and depth. Wolves are expressive and natural, while the queens lean more historical than stylized, with carefully rendered adornments. Hot air balloons feel ornate and slightly fantastical. Perfect for illustrated fairy tales, historical fiction, or poetic narratives with a nostalgic tone. 1. Branch line. Stipple morphology. Rendered entirely in fine, branching strokes, these drawings have a distinctive organic rhythm, like everything is made from tangled roots or veins. The technique is visually striking and consistent across all subjects. Wolves and cottages are easy to recognize despite the abstract texture. The balloons work well, though they almost feel like they're growing rather than floating. Queens are the most unusual. Textural detail is impressive, but likeness is looser. Best for conceptual illustration, experimental printmaking, or book covers that need visual intrigue over realism. 2. Minimal ink isolation. Sparse, inky marks on near-empty backgrounds give these drawings a quiet, contemplative presence. The negative space is just as important as the strokes, lending everything a sense of stillness. Cottages and balloons are minimal but readable. Wolves are abstracted to their essential forms, and queens are the least distinct, more implied than defined. Ideal for poetic projects, minimalist prints, or visual storytelling, where silence and suggestion take the lead. 1. Celadon, red scroll. Etching. Highly ornate linework paired with red and green duotone gives these illustrations the feel of vintage currency or traditional stamp engravings. There's a sense of precision and ceremonial flair throughout. Cottages and balloons are full of charm and finely balanced detail. Wolves stand out for their decorative, even emblematic quality. Queens appear regal and well-defined, stylized with a mix of East Asian and Western influences. Well suited for collectible packaging, certificate-style prints, or illustrated editions with a formal, antique touch. 5. Fluid graphite portrait sketch. This one clearly reads as pencil or graphite drawing. Loose lines, visible construction marks, and a natural variation in pressure make it feel hand-done and believable. Subjects are all well represented. Cottages have depth and gesture without overworking. Wolves are sketched with confident anatomy. The queens lean more like figure studies than formal portraits, but still carry personality. A convincing and flexible drawing style, ideal for concept art, portrait commissions, or expressive sketchbook work. 5.8. Hatched contour linework. Highly polished and clearly digital, this linework mimics the look of pen and ink illustration but feels too clean and uniform to be mistaken for traditional drawing. Every stroke is deliberate, with little sign of looseness or variation in pressure. The cottage and balloon subjects work particularly well in this stylized approach. Wolves are slightly cartoonish, and the queens fall into a manga-inspired aesthetic rather than classical sketch. While technically impressive, it leans more toward comic art or character design than genuine sketchbook work. Strong fit for children's media, games, or graphic storytelling. 119. Delicate sepia linework. Loose pencil lines and soft shading give this a warm, aged feel, like sketches pulled from an old portfolio or theatrical costume study. There's a strong sense of gesture, with flowing poses and abstract forms blending into the background. The wolf drawings feel the least confident, lacking anatomical grounding. Cottages and balloons have charm, but often get caught in exaggerated proportions. Queens are where the style thrives, expressive, stylized, and imaginative. Not ideal for realism or technical work, but perfect for expressive concept art, visual storytelling, or vintage-themed book illustration. 121. Finestipple Ink drawing. Undeniably rooted in drawing tradition, pen, pencil, or possibly fine ink. There's an emphasis on controlled line weight and dot-based shading, often resembling stippling. The architectural and organic forms are well observed, showing spatial awareness and solid construction. Some of the vertical scenes, especially with animals and royalty, feel flatter or overly stylized, but still fall comfortably within illustrative sketchwork. The barren trees, crumbling walls, and distant travelers evoke classical storybook etchings. One of the more technically confident styles overall, ideal for narrative illustration, field studies, or historical concept art. 125. Monochrome Silhouette doodles. These lean hard into graphic art and cartoon territory, bordering on linocut or silkscreen aesthetics. While technically drawings, their rough silhouettes, flattened contrast, and deliberate naivety make them more illustrative than illustrative drawing in the classical sense. Character proportions are wildly off, linework is often replaced by shape cutouts, and anatomical detail is minimal to non-existent. The more surreal segments, with eyes, monsters, and disjointed limbs, evoke underground zines or outsider art. It's stylized on purpose, but not suitable for showcasing fine sketch technique. Works best where bold visual storytelling is the goal, not technical draftsmanship. 160. Hand-drawn fantasy sketch. This highly polished style borders on photorealistic graphite work, with dramatic lighting, detailed shading, and intricate texturing that resemble concept art or fine pencil renderings. While it uses drawing fundamentals, the finish is too refined and cinematic to feel purely hand-drawn. It leans into digital realism, especially in the precise anatomy and smooth gradients. Subjects are rendered clearly and consistently, especially the wolves and hot air balloons. The queens vary in approach, but are all identifiable. Some stylization appears in the horizontal images, adding a fantasy twist. The execution is striking and skilled, though the polish detracts from the organic, imperfect quality that defines most traditional drawings. 161. Delicate pencil storybook. Fine pencil work defines this style, marked by a calm, airy quality and gentle transitions between light and shadow. The use of space feels intentional, often allowing white backgrounds to enhance the sketch-like presence of the figures. Many of the vertical subjects lean into narrative charm, especially the animals interacting with children or the poised queens, bringing a soft emotional pull. The wolves, in particular, maintain a slightly stylized yet believable anatomy, and the trees feel studied but whimsical. It's a refined graphite aesthetic, with just enough imperfection to feel genuinely illustrated. 170. Loose pastel scribble. Crayon-like strokes give this one an impulsive energy, blending childlike spontaneity with abstract expression. The layering of vibrant colors, electric greens, oranges, pinks, and blues, feels deliberately unruly, forming suggestive outlines, rather than detailed depictions. Recognition is still possible in houses, wolves, queens, and hot air balloons, though detail is sacrificed for gesture and movement. The more abstract clusters lean heavily into decorative territory, bordering on pattern design. While loosely illustrative, it lacks the narrative grounding that defines more traditional drawing styles. 189. Doodled anime sketch. Highly stylized ink washes and scratchy line work dominate the aesthetic here, blending sketching with painterly abstraction. There's a raw spontaneity to the strokes that recalls fashion illustration or concept art, particularly in the human figures and wolves. While the expressive messiness gives strong artistic flair, it walks a fine line between drawing and mixed media. The characters maintain strong form despite the chaotic strokes, but some environments dissolve into near gestural splashes. It's unmistakably a drawing style, but its intensity leans more toward graphic illustration than classical sketching. 220. Monoline organic minimalism. Minimalist and refined, this style uses sparse continuous lines to imply form with elegance and restraint. The compositions feel deliberate, often placing emphasis on negative space and silhouette rather than texture or shading. Undeniably within the realm of drawing, this leans toward the conceptual end, more design-oriented than illustrative. It's suited for modern editorial or fine art contexts rather than narrative or detailed visual storytelling, but it holds up as a stylistically consistent drawing technique. 227. Monochrome red line art. Sketchy, expressive line work with loose contours gives this a raw, casual energy. The red overlay is bold and unconventional, but doesn't obscure the fact that these are clearly pencil or ink-like drawings underneath. This style fully qualifies as a drawing approach, albeit one that feels zine-inspired or rooted in indie comics. The emphasis is on emotion and spontaneity rather than precision, making it well suited for storytelling or illustrative diary formats. 234. Loose gestural linework. Fine, jittery ink lines define this style, delicate yet chaotic, giving a spontaneous, hand-drawn feel. Earlier grids suggest traditional pen sketches, especially in the cottages, balloons, and wolves, where structure is still respected. The portraits also maintain recognizability while embracing looseness. Later panels, however, veer into near abstraction. The linework becomes so erratic it begins to obscure the subject, flirting with expressive scribble art. While all still fall under the umbrella of drawing, the consistency of form drops off in the final grids, making those more interpretive than illustrative. 243. Continuous single-line ink drawing. This clearly falls into the realm of drawing, defined by clean, continuous lines with minimal shading or detail. The forms are instantly recognizable: cottages, hot air balloons, wolves, portraits, making them feel purposeful rather than experimental. Despite the simplicity, the linework is confident and deliberate. Even the more abstract figures in the final rows maintain coherence and stylistic unity. It's stylized, but the discipline in execution keeps it firmly grounded in traditional drawing technique. 244. Loose grayscale pencil sketch. This is unmistakably drawing. Rough sketch-like pencil marks define the entire look. Every image appears as a loose draft or concept sketch, complete with visible construction lines and unrefined strokes. While it's clearly digital, the visual language mimics physical pencil or graphite sketching. The anime-influenced characters add a stylistic edge, but the unfinished quality reinforces the sense of process, making this feel raw and hand-drawn. 251. Grayscale digital ink wash. Photorealistic lighting and intricate grayscale shading create a cinematic feel, evoking high-end concept art or a still from a black and white movie. The contrast is sharp but not harsh, allowing for depth without losing detail. While the environments are meticulously rendered, there's an emotional softness to the characters and scenes that keeps it grounded in storybook fantasy. It leans more toward fine digital painting than sketch, merging technical precision with a dreamlike mood. 270. Monochrome Oriental Linework. Clean and delicate linework defines the style, offering intricate detail without relying on color or shading. The illustrations resemble vintage engravings or premium coloring book pages, with refined outlines and ornamental touches. Each scene feels composed with balance and care, ideal for decorative use or narrative illustrations. Despite the absence of tone or texture, the precision gives the style richness and a timeless elegance. 319. Warm Sepia. Monoline scenes. Flat lines and uniform geometry dominate, with a strict vector look that lacks any sign of hand-drawn work. At times, it even leans into photorealistic elements, breaking the visual consistency and further distancing it from traditional drawing. Some cottages and balloons appear as basic icons, while wolves and queens range from oversimplified to oddly rendered. The occasional photo insert makes the style feel more like a design collage than a sketch-based approach. It doesn't hold up as a drawing style in any meaningful sense. 340. Gritty rain-washed sketch. Highly polished with crisp linework, dramatic shading, and cinematic lighting. The aesthetic leans toward a serious, semi-realistic anime look with dynamic compositions and strong emotional tone. Everything feels intentional and stylized without becoming overly abstract. Wolves, cottages, and balloons are rendered with a moody atmosphere, while the characters, particularly the queens and couples, carry a strong emotional charge. The final grid shifts into gritty manga panels, filled with tension and expressive detail, giving the entire set a cohesive, narrative-driven energy. 343. Monochrome Graphite Reverie. Delicate graphite shading and soft gradients create a polished, airy finish with minimal line work. The palette leans toward pale grays and whites, emphasizing smooth transitions and a gentle luminosity that feels both classical and contemporary. Cottages, balloons, wolves, and queens all share this refined aesthetic, appearing detailed yet serene. Human subjects, particularly the female portraits, evoke a calm strength. The vertical format is consistent and well-balanced, making the style ideal for quiet, elegant storytelling. 374. Midnight Rouge sketch lines. Thin, confident lines on stark black or white backgrounds define this striking sketch style. It feels raw yet intentional, with expressive contours and a sense of attitude baked into every stroke. There's an urban, manga-influenced sharpness throughout. The wolves are fierce and reactive, the queens aloof and stylized, while the young modern characters, some masked, some posing, radiate cool detachment and confidence. The aesthetic fits edgy character design, fashion-focused illustration, or dynamic layout concepts. The drawing styles we looked at gave a huge variety of sketch types, some loose and expressive, others tight and stylized. These are perfect for storyboarding, concept work, or when you want to break away from realism and lean into something more interpretive. Hopefully this video helped you discover a few new favorites. If you enjoyed it, liking, commenting and subscribing helps the channel grow. And for extra support, or to get access to the PDF guide with all the prompts I used, visit my Patreon or Ko-fi down below. I thank you so much for watching, and let's continue prompting.